And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest episode of the Sling'N podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Kent.
And joining us tonight is Lee Weems of First Person Safety. Lee, welcome to the show.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm glad to be here.
We're happy to have you, man. Happy to have you. So, real quickly, one of the things we'd like to start off all of our shows with our guests is to ask a very simple question, and that is to give them an opportunity to explain who they are when they're not on the range and doing awesome stuff with the various tools of the pew pew life. So, Lee, who the hell are you, man?
Well, let's see. As we were talking in the pre-show, I'm actually kind of paid to do my hobbies. And I guess to get it off the range, I'll go back to the story of kind of how I got there. I grew up in a very extended family in middle Georgia. Graduated high school with no plan other than that I was never going to school again. I was done when I walked across that stage at the high school graduation 30 years ago. And that's it, I'm done. Well, after about 4 years of working in a factory, I decided that was probably not the best of plans. And I went and enrolled in Georgia Military College, which is a 2-year school in Milledgeville, Georgia, and completed an associate's degree there. And then transferred to Valdosta State and started work on a bachelor's degree with intent to be a middle school social studies and English teacher. And I got into my senior year, and I was told by my advisor that I would not be allowed to have a job as I did student teaching. And it's like, well, I'm a non-traditional student paying my way through school. I can't afford to not have a job. And so I ended up switching majors. Since I was going to be a social studies teacher, I had a lot of history and political science classes. And I ended up with a bachelor's in political science with a minor in history. And I knew that was not going to be an employable degree to have. So I began looking at graduate school programs, and I went to the University of Georgia and went to work with the University of Georgia Police for the primary reason is the fact that if you work there, you got free tuition. And that's how I earned a graduate degree. And while there, I was sent to firearms instructor school in 2003 is when I got my first actual certification as an instructor. Ultimately, I was appointed as the chief deputy of the Oconee County Sheriff's Office and then took over the firearms training program there. And that has led to the burgeoning private instruction business plus everything that we do law enforcement-wise. And then with the graduate degree that I achieved at UGA, I have a job teaching political science and American government for Georgia Military College. I've returned back to where I started as an instructor.
That's fantastic, man. Kent, I think it's safe to say we have probably the smartest guest that we have had today. At least the most pedigree and credentialed with regards to academics.
You know what really just kills me is we have all these. I mean, Ashton Ray is a pharmacologist, though. I can't even say that word, right? We had Ashton on here, and he's talking about viscosity. This dude's going to talk about poli-sci. I can't even count to 10.
Well, I know you guys have had Dave Spalding.
Right.
Dave talks about his degree in physical education, but he's actually got a master's degree as well.
Well, to be fair, Dave was Kent's guest at the time. That was from our archives.
Okay.
So Kent and I together, as the dynamic duo that we are, have not had the pleasure of hosting Dave Spalding just yet.
We can fix that, though.
We're working on it.
Suffice it to say, all of our guests are smarter than us.
Well,
by a wide margin.
You need to get Tiffany Johnson on, who she has a master's degree and a law degree. And I have a little game that I play called Tiffany Johnson Podcast Bingo, that whenever she's on another podcast, I get to add a bingo square on the bingo board.
Okay.
And John Hearn, who is another guy who is very well respected from both the academic side and the law enforcement firearm side, would be another great guest for you.
I love it when the guests start lining up other guests.
I can keep going. Brian Hill, Spencer Keepers, lots of guys.
We've had Spencer.
We got Spencer on that list.
Yep. Spencer's an awesome guy. I love him to death.
So let's talk for a little bit about, since we're on the educational smart guy topic.
All right.
Let's talk a little bit about adult education and how it dovetails into firearms training.
Okay.
So it interests me greatly to know that there's what I would call two different types of firearms training that I've seen. I've seen a lot of Socratic method stuff, and I've seen an awful lot of, well, the manual says it's 11:15 and we're supposed to be calling a water break. So let's call a water break at 11:15, right?
Yeah.
You've had the opportunity to teach civilians and law enforcement. So you've had the institutionalized training thing, and you've had your own company now for quite some time. Would you say that you use more of the Socratic method? I would assume you allow each other to talk.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The one major difference that you see between the two groups is the motivation factor of the students. Is the private sector student rarely is going to give up their weekend, give up their money, give up their ammunition, and not show up and be motivated at the class. Now, you may have a struggling student, or you may have a student that signed up for the class to come show you how good they are, but there typically is not a lack of motivation to be there. Unfortunately, some of the times on the law enforcement side, they were told to go to the range, and it's just part of the job. There can be the lack of motivation there at times, and I know the private sector gun student just doesn't understand that. But when it's just another day at work, it's just another day at work, and that's how some people see it. You do have, like I said, we have a lot of times we run voluntary range sessions, and the people that sign up and come for those, they're just as motivated as the private sector student. It's the state minimum on our qualification test is 80%. It's the 80 and the 82% shooters that are never motivated to come to the range. The guys that can knock it out with the 98s and the 100s, they'll be down there every day if you give them ammo to be down there every day to shoot.
I can't imagine. If I was law enforcement and you said you can either go, I don't know, bright speed or do whatever you do for work, or you can come shoot, I'd be in line to shoot every time. I'd just be there with my hand up. But,
well, you would think it'd be that way, but we were at one time, if you shot 95 or better on our qualification course, we were paying for you to shoot GSSF matches.
wow.
We paid for the match fee. You went as a day of work to go shoot the matches. And we actually had practice sessions. And the way we did it was everybody who shot 95 or better that wanted to go could go. And then we went out and we had basically an internal competition to give ourselves a ranking. And, they had the team match that's in conjunction with the regular match. And so we took the top 3 guys from that internal competition. They were 1, 2, and 3. They were the top team. Then when the 4, 5, and 6 were the next team. And however you finished at that match, so we went to the Glock match, which used to be over in Rockdale, Georgia. Rockdale County. We go shoot that match. Well, whatever your finish was in that match was your team placement for the next match. So you wanted to be on that top number 1 team. And that lasted as long as I was doing the registrations for the match and organizing, okay, we're going to leave the sheriff's office at 8:00 to drive over there. When it got to be, okay, guys, I can't go this weekend because of another commitment. Here's all the registration information. Then nobody else would do it. You run into the things. It's a Saturday. They finally got a Saturday off. They want to spend that with their family. They don't want to go spend it at the range.
So you essentially had to share the burden that is experienced by many match directors in the shooting sports industries. You might be that go-to guy that breaks ground at your local range to start having those matches. And then as soon, even though you have plenty of other people that could even be considered your equal at that range, as soon as you stop putting in the effort for even one moment to host that match, watch how fast that local club disperses. It's sad to see that, but
yeah, I refer to it as the right to do more work award.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
If you're the one that'll get in there and you'll organize it and you'll do it, you end up doing it. And I, in my position at the sheriff's office, I'm the chief deputy, by the way. I have to watch myself that I'm not constantly heaping work on the same people.
Right.
Mm.
Because the tendency is, Bob always gets it done, so I'm going to give this assignment to Bob. Well, if you keep waiting down Bob and you never make Bill work, okay, then Bob's doing twice the work for the same money as Bill. You know, where's the motivation factor and the fairness there? And so you do have to watch that from a management standpoint, that you're just not loading down your people. Now, the truly motivated workers will come and they'll seek out assignments. They will seek things to do, and you got to let them do it, but you got to watch the burnout factor as well.
Somewhere Bob just heard this and said, "Yeah, anyhow,
Yeah,
make that son of a bitch Bill do something. God damn it!"
yeah, yeah. We've got it made now. We've developed a great team that have really stepped up and grown into the positions that they've earned. They weren't given positions; they've earned the positions, and they're really working as a cohesive team. And sometimes I come into work, it's like, well, what am I doing today? Because they're doing everything, and it's really fun. And so now it's actually freed me up, where I'm going back and teaching a lot of the entry level pistol training for our guys, because we hire people in the jail. They can work for up to 6 months prior to going to what we call jail school to get jail certified. Before they go to patrol as a deputy, they have to go through the police academy. Well, before we'll send them to the police academy, we do firearms training for them in-house, so that we've already made sure they can qualify at least a 90% level before they go to the academy. And so I'm getting to go back and do some of that entry-level training that I never had time to do before. Matter of fact, that's what I'm doing in the morning. And it's really fun to be able to get back hands-on.
So, must be cool for them to see the big boss man come out and run there. That's probably fun, right? Or is it nerve-wracking?
Some of both, and I've got to point the self-assessment finger at myself here. I noticed a very, very, very different trend, two separate trends going when I looked at reviews of my private sector classes, in which they talked about my relaxed teaching style and being easygoing. And if you asked any of our personnel, not a single one of them would have told you that I was relaxed and easygoing on the range. Just because of the fact that I just had no patience for, kind of go back to that motivation factor. We're paying your salary, we're buying your ammo, we prepared your vehicle to get here, and we bought your gasoline. Yeah, be here on time, ready to go. Let's get the job. And you don't remember something we did the last training session. And so I had very little patience for that, and it showed. And it actually got bad enough that I'm pretty sure there were personnel that were trying to make sure they didn't come to the range on days that I was there teaching. And so I'm having to, again, point the self-assessment finger at myself. I'm having to go back and rebuild those relationships with the personnel and prove to them that I'm not the big bad ogre that I made myself into, that I'm actually interested in their well-being and that I want them to get better.
Wow. That's quite the self-reflective answer. I'm pleased that you're able to do it. I've just got to forgive my humor, but
sure.
I'm picturing like Georgia law enforcement, like the Family Guy scene where there's a bunch of dudes chained up and they're going, "Taking it off there, boss," and they're wiping their fingers. And you're standing behind them by 3 feet and to the right with a whip, going, "Do it again, do it again."
Very cool hand, Luke.
Yes, there you go.
I did one time take out a work detail and strap on a Colt 25.5 and 45 Colt and an old Sam Brown duty belt and stand there with an old high standard pump shotgun rested on my hip just so I could do it.
I literally want your job now. That's fucking perfect.
It's the only work detail I've ever taken out. But I'm like, my good, I'm doing this one time.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm curious real quick before we change topics.
Sure.
So obviously, we've talked about you do the firearms instruction for qualification standards for, some of the jail deputies or the jailers. And through first person safety, you obviously have quite the resume and experience of teaching civilians, right?
Sure.
Do you find that there are similar challenges from teaching junior, or call them novice or rookie law enforcement officers versus or that are similar to teaching maybe some civilians? Do you see any type of bleed over with any of the challenges, or are the challenges presented by both groups pretty much the same?
The actual shooting challenges are identical.
Right.
It's the motivation factor that's the difference.
Do you find that the motivation factor is better or worse than one of those two groups?
The private sector students are by far more motivated. They've got more skin in the game.
Right.
And, their job's not riding on it, but quite basically the state standards are so low that it's hard not to be able to shoot the state standard level. The Georgia state qualification test, you can miss the target 6 times and still pass. Completely hit nothing but planet Earth 6 times and still pass.
What's the max distance on that?
25, and there's only 4 shots at 25.
So you can miss every 25-yard shot and still be. Oh wow!
You can miss. There's 4 shots at 25. There's 4 shots at 15. Everything else is at the 3 and the 7. So you could miss all 4 of your 25-yard shots. 2, so 50% of your 15-yard shots. As long as you got 10-point hits with every other shot, you'd still qualify. And my personal standard is if it starts at the 25. If I pull a shot out of the 10-point ring at 25, I shoot everything with the 7 and 3 wrong-handed, including the draws, the reloads, everything. So I'm drawing, reaching across, drawing, doing a spin with the gun, getting it into the hand and shooting just to make it worthwhile to be on the range. That's not a wasted 30 rounds. We've actually adopted a qualification course with our agency that's harder than the state standard, which the post rules allow. Just because the state course is there's just nothing to it. But that's what they got to pass to get to the academy. I view the annual qualification as an administrative box to check.
Right.
We're going to go check this box so that you meet the state standard, and then we're going to go train. I would like to take a moment. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Tom Givens and Range Master.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with the casino drill then. Okay, the top 4 scores on the casino drill in class are all my guys.
Yeah, you told me that on the phone. That's awesome.
Now there is a guy, Kirk Clark, out of Texas, who is tied for the number 1 spot with Captain James Hale. But the top 4 guy scores in class on that drill are my guys, and so we train to a much higher standard than what the state requires. But they've got to meet that, check that administrative box before they can get to that level of training.
You know what? I shot that the other day, and I forgot about the 7 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was a superhero for a second. I said, shit, that one don't count. I got to go do that again.
Yeah. By the way, the record on that is 10:33.
Okay.
10.33 seconds. And that's Captain James Hill and Kirk Clark. Number 2 is 12:07, Investigator Adam Thrower. Number 3 is a former guy of ours, but he set the record with us. It was 12:20 with Clark Sparrow of Sparrow Defense, who is with a neighboring agency. He's got a training company as well. And then number 4 is Captain James Hill again at 12 something. My best time on it is a 13 something in class.
Well,
the gauntlet has been thrown down, sir.
I'm gonna be over there in Ohio with Tim Kelly coming up. What, August the 16th or August the 20th? I don't know. I'll have me an official casino drill time quite soon.
Well, there you go.
Y'all can laugh at it, but
well, we won't laugh at you. We'll laugh with you.
We'll see. We'll see what we do.
No, laugh at him.
Yeah.
It motivates him.
Oh, I'm excited to see that. I'm really excited to see what Tim does. I've met Tim in a handgun combatives class. Super, super, super guy. Matter of fact, for the listening audience, Tim sent me a message that he was going to be on your show, and I listened to the episode and several others, and I said, hey, that was a nice episode. He goes, well, why don't you contact him? And that's how I got on here tonight. But I'm really impressed with Tim and Frank, and they got some good stuff going up there in North Carolina, and it's good to see that Tim's a quality individual that's going to be carrying on Dave Spalding's material after Dave hangs it up.
So let me I'm going to tell something on Tim while he's not here right quick.
Oh, no, he's here.
Oh shit. Okay, well, I'm gonna tell something on him anyway. I just had 2 of his students in my CCW Essentials class from this past weekend. I had 2 people that were his alum that came up to train with me. And first thing is obviously like he recommended me. So like can't appreciate that anymore. But damn, does that dude put together some good students.
Yeah.
Those guys did awesome. Really, really, really succeeded and excelled. And the gentleman was actually contributed. He came up with an analogy for a guy. I was straight up stuck on trying to talk to a gentleman about, how the corner is like the arc of a clock or something like that, right? Trying to get the guy to arc around the corner instead of slamming his face into it and then, making a turn, right? And guy had a killer analogy for that. They were just some great students. So Tim puts out some good people out of that place. Gotta like it.
Well, I mean, we have to remember Tim is a Marine. He knows how to break it down simple.
I have a feeling. I'm starting to get the feeling though that he makes Frank do most of the work. So maybe they were Frank students. I don't know, but those guys did awesome. So let's talk about the big elephant in the room here and get that out of the way. Why should every law enforcement agency and military switch back to the lever gun, Mr. Lee?
Well, I don't know if they should switch back to the lever gun.
Well, you said on the phone that we should throw away the AR-15. Eugene Stoner was a fool, and we should all go back to the lever gun. That's what you told me.
That's not exactly what I said.
No, it's not.
Now, for a law enforcement context, I think the lever gun actually offers a lot of things. For the military context, I don't think it offers as much at all. The primary thing that it offers for the law enforcement context and for the private citizen is the lack of mechanical offset with the sights. And, I'm sure if you guys have done AR training and you're teaching AR classes, you have a hard time driving it through. It's like you're saying, the sight is 2 inches higher than the muzzle, and at a typical self-defense distance, someone's coming through the door of your house, or you're engaged in something. So tempting just to throw that front side of the red dot up there and shoot where the dot is, versus having to, offset for the mechanical offset of the sights. With the lever gun, you just don't get that with iron sights. You've got a quarter of an inch of offset. You got basically the side of the height and the circumference of the barrel, and that's it. The other thing of that is that the black rifle automatically brings up connotations that juries see, and the facts of a shooting or a use of force could be exactly the same, but if the jury sees an AR platform rifle or I keep saying AR, but it could be any of the AKs, whatever, versus Granddad's deer rifle, they're just going to look at that completely different. And
actually, I believe we've even had that conversation with. I apologize. It was not a conversation that we were part of, but one that I had heard on another podcast where they were talking about traveling to training events, and there are times that they've gone with their completely tacked out black rifle, insert AR something or AK something here, and they get scrutinized, right? Going through TSA or whatever have you. Everyone kind of looks at it with that raised eyebrow, and there's that that mental process where they're kind of profiling you. Like, okay, is this guy the next mass shooter? Is he a wannabe John Rambo, or is this some sort of legitimate purpose? And then the guys that have traveled to similar classes but taken a shotgun, like just a standard pump shotgun, or a lever gun, and nobody bats an eye,
right?
So it's a very valid point with the connotations that it makes. Yeah, as Tony says in the chat, it's the quote unquote bad gun.
All I have to say about that is you'd think if you were the Hampton Inn, like 15, 20 minutes away from the Sig Sauer Academy, you'd be used to some idiot dropping a whole case of 9mm on the floor and having to pick them up in the lobby. Not that I know anybody that's happened to, but that poor little girl looked at me like, what in the world is that? Like, it's cold out.
I tell you what's fun is if you go sit down in the hotel lobby, when there's a big training event in town or whatever, and you can just watch as the guys come down for breakfast, and you know who's going to be in the class
Yep.
later that day.
Oh, you see, I saw it at the NRA annual meeting last year in Indianapolis. Like you go down to the breakfast area, and you're like, okay, you're here for the NRA. You're here for the NRA. You. Okay, yep.
A couple of years ago, I was in Little Rock for the Rangemaster Tactical Conference, and I was sitting down in the lobby playing my Spot the Attendee game, and I keep seeing these other guys come down. And I'm like, they look like they would be at the event. You know, they're going to be at the conference, and then all of a sudden they all like leave and go outside and get into a 15-passenger van and drive away. And it turns out that there is a federal law enforcement agency training bureau in Little Rock. And these guys were all just happened to be staying at the same hotel there for training that week. And like, guys, it stands out.
Yeah.
If you think that the plaid shirt and the khaki pants are fooling people,
nope.
It stands out.
It's the defense contractor tuxedo.
Yeah.
Contractor camo, man.
It looks like you got dragged through a 511 catalog. You are failing at the gray man test.
Yeah, I've actually been making a conscientious effort that as my 511s and my LA police gears and stuff, as they all wear out, I'm replacing them with carpenter pants and stuff from Duluth Trading Company.
Yep, love those things. And I while there might be certain aspects of his personality that I disagree with, James Yeager has that shit on lockdown with his Mickey Mouse t-shirt. His explanation, he's like, who's going to mess with the 50-something-year-old grandfather with a Mickey Mouse t-shirt? Right? I was like, that's a valid point. I got a trip to Disney coming up, so might as well. But yeah, so Corey brings up, at least we ate good at the Waffle House. Corey, everybody eats good at the Waffle House after a night of drinking to the level that we did that night. Jesus criminy.
Actually, you know what? Speaking of people who don't fit the profile, Corey doesn't really stand out as Mr. Tactical.
No, he does a great job at it.
Actually, not even at all. He always looks like he just stepped off of his granddaddy's boat launch.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
So good for you, Corey. You got that shit on lock. So,
well, on that vein, Claude Warner, the tactical professor, is his webpage. Claude will show up to a class or to a match in a jacket and tie.
I like that.
I've seen him shoot an entire state championship level IDPA match with a jacket and tie, and walking around with his stuff in a briefcase instead of a range bag.
That's a great point. I just had Tony out at the range, and he showed up in a Tesla with New York plates on it. He was fooling everybody.
That's cheating, Tony.
He was fooling everybody. P.S. Them sons of bitches move.
Oh, yeah.
That thing went 0 to Mars in like 2.8 seconds.
Oh, dude, there is video upon video of a Tesla Model S smoking the dog shit out of all these different modern muscle cars and stuff on the straight track.
That's awesome. All right, before we get too far in the weeds on this stuff, let's ask some more educational firearms training kind of questions of Mr. Weems here. So talk to us a little bit about your course offerings. What are you teaching as a core, handgun 1, handgun 2? What's the philosophy and backbone of your teaching, and where did it come from?
To date, my core class has been a class called Defensive Pistol Skills as a one-day version, and then I combine that with a legal presentation that I do in another snippet of classes into a 2-day traveling roadshow called Applied Pistolcraft. All of day 2 of Applied Pistolcraft, and then the 1-day Defensive Pistol Skills, which is probably going to become like a Pistol Applications 1, something that delineated as a 1-day class. All about making decisions with a gun in your hand. And it's taking those 4 lifestyle cardinal rules, firearms possession, and applying this to shooting problems, such as we run courses of fire in which you have to identify shoot, no shoot targets. You have to process information. The other students are serving as the jury and are watching. And if you muzzle a no shoot, it's a DQ on the drill. And that's hard from people with I'm not knocking competition, but it's hard from people who come from a sport shooting background in which you got, no shoot, shoot. And the fastest way to get from one to the other is just go right straight across. Well, then if we've just told you in the safety brief that you don't point a weapon at something that you don't intend to shoot, and then we allow you to do that in class, then we allowed you to violate the safety briefing.
That's a very interesting approach.
And so we run the drill. We actually do it in a head-to-head competition in the class as well, where if you sweep the no shoot, it's a DQ. You lose to the guy. It doesn't matter if he was 30 seconds slower than you on the drill. If you swept the no shoot, you lost. And
muzzle aversion techniques are a real thing. It's interesting when you put people of different backgrounds in that scenario. Military dudes oftentimes sweep everything for whatever reason. But I'm sorry, I cut you off. I'm sitting here going like this. The last 2 hours of like 2 days ago, I had a bunch of students on the line, and I let them run that like 6 times, and I was like, "Great guys, how many of y'all just pointed guns all at them no shoots?" I do it that way. I let them do it a bunch. I'm like, "So how many muzzles did we point at no shoots?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, okay." So let's back up and see how we can avoid doing that.
Yeah, and the other thing that the other students are watching for is to make sure that the finger comes off the trigger and goes back to register whenever there's any kind of movement or you're averting the muzzle to avoid a no shoot. So basically, we're taking those lifestyle rules and we're incorporating them in the courses of fire, and then making you process information as part of the shooting problem. So there may be a number on the target that indicates a shooting sequence that target gets. Yeah. And there may be something on that target that indicates it's a no shoot. And so you're having to process information while you're making the gun with the gun in your hand. Carl Warner said something at dinner one night several years ago that really stuck with me. And he said, most firearms training is nothing but firing squad practice. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, if I can't do better than that, then there's no reason for me to be in the business. And so I began looking for ways to actually incorporate decision-making into training. And so, if Claude's on the range and sees my classes, he'll sit there and think, okay, that's not firing squad training. And it's been very popular, very well received. We get a lot of guys that come back for the class just to run one particular scenario. The rest of it's trigger time practice, and but they come back to run the scenario training that we do just because it's different every time, because it's set up by the students.
Yep.
And so that's been my core class. That and my legal presentation is called Standing Your Ground, and just because of the simple fact that when people hear that, they know it's a self-defense lecture or presentation. I've been working on a new class that I'm going to call Trigger Management. That is a pure technical shooting class. And folks, if you're out there and you've had an instructor standing behind you that tells you every shot that you've missed is because you were jerking the trigger, I can prove to you that you're not jerking the trigger. Okay, that's not so. That is not what is happening. You're tightening your entire hand. You're squeezing your hand as you're pressing the trigger. You're not jerking the trigger. You can jerk the trigger all you want to as long as this is in isolation from the grip, and your shot's going to be fine. And so that's going to be the focus of the trigger management class: is proper grip, proper trigger press. A good phrase for that I got it from Spencer Keepers, and I believe he said he got it from Mike Seeklander. Grip, then press. Get all your grip and then press the trigger. Yep. And that's different because words matter. And that's something I've picked up from Tom Gibbons, is that words matter. It's not grip and press. It's grip, then press. And when you can get the students to internalize that in their brain, it makes sense for them. I had a class out in Texas here a couple of weekends ago and had a very accomplished shooter in the class. He was been a law enforcement guy for over 20 years, federally certified firearms instructor in his own right, and teaches for a group called Palisade Training out in Texas. And he told me at the end of the class, he said, if I'd had that material 20 years ago, my shooting career would have been completely different. He said, because all I was told on the line as a rookie officer was you're jerking the trigger and you needed more dry fire. And I remember in the academy, I'm on the firing line, and the guy who came out to call himself working range week, because I mean he just come hang out at the range, kept walking up behind me and saying, "You're jerking the trigger." And so, well, how do I stop? Well, just stop jerking the trigger.
Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant, sir. I'm glad you were here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, because the state standards were so low, it was a more difficult course back then than it is now. I still passed. And like, this isn't any good. I made it through the academy with an 82 and an 84 on the state firearms qualification, and got out. And you know, we had to do qualifications again with the agency, and I'm still shooting like 84s, 85s, 86s. And I'm asking the instructors, well, how do I get better? It's like, stop jerking the trigger. And I finally go to a class with someone who showed me. He walks by and said, "You jerked the trigger on that." I said, "Well, you know what? I keep getting told this all the time. How do you do this without jerking the trigger?" Because to the student, it does not feel like they're jerking the trigger.
Right.
And he did some work with the trigger on me, and I immediately went up in 10 points on my qualification scores. And like, wow, so that was actually what actual instruction can do for you. And so it's taking me up until now to try to figure out how to convey that to people in a manner that's actually where they can internalize it.
It's so funny how people also have no context of where the wall is in their trigger.
Right.
Right. It's always amazing to me how I do a thing where I'm trying to make them find the wall, and I'm talking them through like a countdown, and I say, 4, 3, 2, 1, and on 0, I want you to go to bang. And I tell them to go all the way to where 1 is, where the wall should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say 0, and you see the finger go bang. And I'm like, you weren't there yet, bro. And they go, okay, 3, 2, 1. And the idea is to count them down to 1 and have the shot break, right? Control an environment. They're on the sights. Count them down to 1 of the shot breaks. And like, oh, that's where it is.
Right.
Then you step away from them, and, there it goes.
Same thing with trigger reset. You can ask people if they reset the trigger during recoil, and they'll tell, "Oh, yeah, that's what I do." And then you go out and you force them to shoot at a 1 shot per second cadence.
Yep.
So that you can actually see what the trigger finger is doing.
Yep.
And they're not resetting during recoil. They're not even starting the reset until after the sights are back on the target.
Yeah. And if you listen real quietly, you can hear Gaston Glock's marketing go click, click,
exactly.
click. And you're like, hey, man, that ain't what you – yep.
I'll give another plug for another training organization, OBSP Training out of Paducah, Kentucky. The company's owned by Jerry Jones, but Bruce Gray's kind of their philosophical guru, and they have a class called Applied Fundamentals that is taught by a guy who I can't tell you what he does for a living, but he's a good guy, and it's phenomenal that he is just a stickler on the reset during recoil, and he will have you at the end of that class. You know exactly what you're doing with the trigger as you're doing it, and it's frustrating. I mean, it was a very frustrating class for the first 2 days, and then the 3rd day it clicked in my head, and it took my skills to another level. And so, even if you've been a student of the gun for 20 years and you've got multiple instructor certifications, you can still go to someone else that's gifted and that is talented and knowledgeable, and you can learn skills and little nuggets that will improve you as both a shooter, and then that will also improve you as an instructor.
Absolutely the truth. It's amazing where you pick that stuff up too. It's funny. I swear to God, my students sometimes think I'm like running a marketing company for all my competition, right? Because I all the time I'm like, I got this from this dude, I got this from this girl, I got this from this. Like, we're always trying to give credit, and there's nothing new under the sun, right? There's only so many ways to press a trigger and line sights and all that jazz. But it's really neat how you pick up just a different analogy. I mean, Well, hell, I'll tell one of myself. I took Jedi's class for the 3rd time in a row. You'd have thought in the first 2 I would have picked up the grind wave technique and how to explain it to a student. No, it took me the 3rd time. And I'm going to go back the next time, and I'm going to think I have it, and I might hear something else. So
Jedi's there's a reason we call him Jedi.
There's that.
Well, when you go through a class the first time, you're worried about cramming magazines. What did he say? What did he say to have the magazines loaded to come back to to the line with? You're so busy worried about getting ready and set up to go for your next time on the line. You're running to the bathroom, you're drinking water, you're in everything, and your mind is not focusing on the material. And so you get back up and you shoot the next drill, and you may have time to scribble down some notes and stuff. But when you come back, if you come back through another class additional times, your brain is freed up to absorb more material. I assist Tom Givens in his classes, and there are still times I've taken his instructor development course. I've assisted with it probably 7 or 8 times now, and I still pick up things standing on the line as he's explaining things to students. Go, oh, okay, all right, I see what he's been saying all this time. I like going. We have the Range Master Tactical Conference. And, it's 30-something instructors from across the country come in, and they're all teaching, have like 5 or 6 blocks going at the same time. Well, when I'm not presenting, I'll go out to the range where some other instructor is teaching. And I don't take a spot on the firing line. I stand over on the side with a notebook, and I listen to everything they give in their teaching point. And then as they're having students shoot the drill, I'm over there writing notes. I can go shoot the stuff on my own. But what I can't get on my own is their presentation, their nuggets, their wisdom. And, as you build more and more expertise and knowledge, you can actually go back through stuff that you've already taken and get more out of it than you did the first time.
Well, in my opinion, or at least in my observation, I dare I even say my professional opinion, firearms instructors are a microcosm representation of the shooting community at large, right? We like to say that they're the best of us because they are the ones that have mastered the craft to the point where they can convey that knowledge and skill to other people. The shooting community is one of the greatest communities on the planet. They're the most caring, the most giving, the most charitable. And the instructor community is not immune from that.
Right.
You have guys, and every instructor that we have had on this podcast has said, "Oh, I got this from this guy. I got this from that girl." We're all working together to get better because we're all serving a common goal. So,
if you tie it back into an academic environment, when you're writing a paper,
yep,
you use footnotes or endnotes, and you put a bibliography at the end of the paper that cites where you got the information from. Mm-hmm. That's no different than attributing something in a class to where you learned it from. And that's key, that you're giving attribution to who developed the material. And I had this conversation with Tom Givens today, and I don't want to keep dropping his name, but I'm going to. He, as part of his Master Firearms Instructor class, does a 4-hour, 300-slide presentation on the evolution of firearms training. Going all the way back to the guys in the early 1900s, the modern era of firearms training, from the first guys that the Colt factory hired and sent around the country with the Colt silhouette target that we all recognize now as the B-27, going out setting up the target at the landfill in every city and county in the United States and running the cops out there and trying to teach them how to use their gun, all the way up to the modern stuff through gun sight to the modern golden age of firearms instruction that we're in right now. And I think the difference between the top tier instructors are the ones that can give you the evolution of where the techniques came from.
Mm-hmm.
That they know where something was created, how we got to where we are now, versus someone who's just parroting what they picked up in somebody else's class. It's how do we get to where we are, and why am I teaching you this? And quite frankly, the broader scope of knowledge that it brings, that if you see a student that's struggling and one technique that you're using isn't working, okay, another technique to try to accomplish the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And That's the difference. And I think one of you said earlier, there's nothing new really under the sun when it comes to shooting firearms. The equipment's changed, but pressing the trigger to the rear without disturbing the sights and diverting the muzzle is the same as it was since guns were invented.
Yep.
And I was discussing a technique that I've stumbled upon here recently, and have been using it with my people to great success. And Tom told me, he said, well, Louis Auerbach was using that same technique 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's funny how that works out.
Yeah. And, the modern era guys coming out, they don't know where that stuff came from. If you mention Jeff Cooper or you mention Ken Hackathorn and they get that kind of look in their face, okay, then they don't really know.
I don't know how. This troubles me. This troubles me because I'm one of the younger firearms instructors in the country, right? I'm in my 30s. I've read that shit. I mean, I looked up Hackathorn. I looked up Arbuck. The old Paladin Press stuff, I don't know. I was reading that stuff before I had any intention to be putting the I word anywhere near my name. I was just from an interested perspective as a student. I don't know how you get into a topic and start at 2012 and go like from the, I don't even know, it must have been earlier than that. The Magpul DVDs forward, right?
Right.
Like there's like someday they'll dig us up and they'll put before Magpul and after Magpul, BM and AM for like all of firearms training, as though that was the big coming of Jesus moment.
Right. And
you look at that stuff and it's like, man, I don't know. None of that was even new then. Nothing's new. And I think you're doing your students, not you as a person, but I think the royal teacher at large is doing their students a disservice. If you're hearing the sound of my voice and somebody's trying to convince you that the shit that they're teaching you is the new fangled latest and greatest, I have the secret sauce, my method, my technique, my all the time, that's a pretty good clue to maybe look around and do a couple more Googles to find somebody else, because that's a scary thought.
I'll give you guys a perfect reference as to how shallow the breadth of knowledge of just the gun industry is and the history behind it. There is a YouTube channel that I stumble across every now and again. The guy's channel is called The Rail Gunsmith. I encourage you all to go look this dude up. This guy reminds me of that old timer that Bob Lee Swagger went to and the shooter that talked about paper patching, and like you will sit here and look up all these new calibers.
I gotta laugh at you, say, because you referred to Shooter the movie, not Point of Impact the novel.
Correct. I read, but not that much.
Yeah.
So anytime anybody has a question about like a caliber, like, so prime example, those of you that watch the podcast and follow me know that I have a soft spot for long range shooting, and I have been looking at getting a new rifle and in a different caliber. And I was looking at the newfangled 300 PRC. Well, apparently something that we didn't think has been done before has been done before and done better.
6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
6.5 Creedmoor is nothing more than around the Swiss have been using to shoot elk.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the Scandinavians have been using to shoot elk and moose for a century.
Yeah, and you could even go back in between there and look at the 260 Remington.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same. It's the same cartridge, essentially.
Yeah.
So, I
just got a bolt gun and 6.5 Grendel, which is basically the same thing as a 260 or 270. Yeah. Yeah,
I've got a 6.5 Grendel. We'll have you on again to talk to 6.5 Grendel. We'll bring Cam on for that one. But speaking of rifles, I want us to jump into you selling us our next lever guns.
Well, let me tie that into what we were just talking about, though, and the evolution of things. I remember 2005-ish, 2006 or somewhere around in there, maybe on up to 2010, these guys started showing up to classes with these fancy single point slings. And you see this guy, oh, wow, look at that. It's a single point sling. That guy's like a real operator. Okay. What did an 1873 Winchester lever gun have on the side of it?
Mm-hmm.
A saddle ring.
Yeah, saddle
or a
ring.
single point sling for a cavalry trooper to sling his carbine while he's on horseback. Okay, it's all just keeps going in cycles. Guess what, guys? People are discovering that 12 gauge shotguns are actually pretty good anti-personnel devices. All of a sudden, wow! Have you guys heard that shotguns are good for self-defense?
Oh shit!
Wow.
You mean Joe Biden was right?
Right? Wow! Who'd have thunk?
Blasphemer! Yeah. We will never admit that man is right.
It's everything comes around again. Appendix carry.
Yeah.
Appendix carry is not new.
Yeah.
It's not. Look at the pictures of the pirates. Where did they carry the pistol? Was shoved right down in the sash along the front. It's not new. It's just become a new vogue thing, and it's been around in popular form for several years now, so it's not even new in vogue anymore. So everything runs in the cycles, and you need to know as an instructor and as a student, so that when you're being sold a bill of goods or not. You need to kind of know that cycle of things and how they come. Now, selling you your next lever gun. I am a fan of the traditional Marlin, like the 336 from back when Marlin was making them before Remington took over. You can generally tell the difference if it's stamped with the letters JM, and the barrel typically is from the era before Remington took over Marlin. Then you have the even older versions that don't have the crossbolt safety in them. Those are my preferences for lever guns. The number one modification you can make to the lever gun is to shorten the stock to about 12 and 3/4 inches, depending on how big you are. It allows you to get the gun more inboard instead of having to stand in this cross-bladed stance. From the traditional rifleman, you can get into more of a modern inboard stance like you would run an M4. But that's the biggest thing. And the sights are going to depend on whether or not you can see the buckhorn sights or not. When I was 18 to 20, and everything, I never dreamed that I would need anything else more than the buckhorn sight. I've gotten now at 48, I can't see the sights as well, and so I'm having to go to additional sighting options. Now there are lots of all of a sudden accessories coming out for the lever guns, accessory rails, etc., so you can attach flashlights and stuff. Midwest Industries has a very nice rail out there. A company called Ranger Point Precision is doing some very nice stuff. Aridus Industries, the shotgun guy, is actually working on a prototype for a red dot co-witness sight that'll work with the lever guns. He's actually going to be in a class I'm teaching the first weekend in Virginia for lever guns.
A crom for lever guns.
For lever guns.
I like it.
Yeah. I would caution that the more that you tactical up your lever gun, the less of that jury advantage we discussed earlier is going to be there. Now, the lever gun that I got in high school, I still use. It's my primary gun. It has been Parkerized in black because the bluing on it faded and it was starting to have surface rust issues. And so I just had it Parkerized. And it does have a black synthetic stock on it, but I can explain that in that it reduced the weight by 30% over what a wood stock would be. To me, that makes a difference when you're carrying. If you're going to carry it into the woods to hunt, having a lighter rifle would be an advantage to it. And then it's not going to rust. The wood's not going to warp because it's not wood anymore. It's plastic. I do have a new production, a Marlin 336Y, the youth model with the 16-inch barrel and the youth size stock that I'm about to put into service. It's going to actually make its debut in the class I got coming up in Virginia in a couple of weeks. So I will be testing one of the new production Marlins Remington's been making them long enough, and the guys that are working in those machines now, they probably got all the kinks worked out. So I'm hearing some pretty decent stuff about the current Marlins that are coming out. I don't have a lot of experience with the Henrys. From what I've seen, they were fine rifles, but the reason I stayed away from them was the fact they did not have side loading gates on them. They have now released some side loading gate models. So at some point, I will probably add a Henry just to get firsthand experience with it. But to me, if you're going to run it in any kind of social setting, you need to have the side loading gate so you can keep shoving the magazine as needed. The big benefit to that Henry design with the side loading gate is they maintained the ability to remove the mag tube and dump all the rounds out of the mag tube without having to run them through the action. And that's a big, just excellent step on their part.
Oh, yeah. Henry's always been really smart when it comes to that stuff. Me personally, if we're talking about conservation of weight, that's the one negative I would give to the Henry, aside from the lack of the side loading gate, as you pointed out, Lee. But yeah, since they debuted those, they've certainly been interesting to me. So what are your thoughts on caliber selection? You mentioned the Marlin 336. I'm assuming the Dirty 30 is your caliber of choice?
Yeah, now you got to remember, I grew up in middle Georgia where 100 yards is a long ways away.
Right.
Just everything we're going to have has got pine trees in between you and it. And so the 30-30 is my caliber of choice. I do have one in 357 and 1894 and 357/38. And an old cowboy action shooter told me years ago, you can either have one that shoots 38 or you can have one that shoots 357s, but one that shoots both is a rare commodity. The pistol caliber carbines are much more susceptible to the overall length of the cartridge issues and the shape of the bullet issues. For instance, I have a love for shooting in my revolvers. The Freedom Munitions 158 grain jacketed round nose. Love it. Shoots the perfect point of aim in every one of my revolvers. Will not feed through my 1894.
Okay.
It just will not feed through the gun. And so I bought some of their flat point that I will be testing tomorrow or sometime this week just to see how they run. So, in theory, you can have the same round for your revolver that you would have in your lever gun. But what you may find and what you're likely to run into is that the round that performs best in your carbine does not perform well in your revolver. And the one that performs the best in your revolver may not perform to its maximum potential in the lever gun. And so you may end up having to average and find a gun, the round that'll work in both, but it's not the best for either.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I'm glad you brought that up because when we start talking about, the older technologies, right, the tried and true, typically with that tried and true stamp comes a understanding of reliability, right? Oh, it doesn't have as many automatically moving parts as the more modern and newfangled technologies that we have, so therefore it's more reliable. Pump shotguns, open breech shotguns, stuff like that. People think of those as, oh, well, it'll run forever. You are the first person, and it does make sense that while you might have the same chambering, the specific round may not be conducive to optimum performance in both the revolver and that's a valid point.
Well, it's got to feed through the action of the lever gun. With a revolver, that's not really a big issue, but it's got to be able to feed through the action of the lever gun. All right. Well, then you got the longer barrel on the carbine. So to wring out that potential, you're going to want a harder loaded round. But then that may be to the point you can't shoot it in the revolver.
Right.
I have the perfect solution to this.
What's that?
Pistol caliber carbine that feeds from a lever action and takes 9mm Glock mags. Mossberg's working on that shit, and it's going to be fugglier than hell.
Well, I've got the perfect combinations that I shoot a 30-30 and then just don't try to match it up.
You mean you don't have a 30-30 Thompson Center contender sitting there on your hip?
No.
Magnum Research BFR, my friend.
Okay.
It is a 5-shot revolver chambered in 30-30 or 45-70. They come in a variety of spicy calibers, but they are freaking huge.
There is somebody out there that does a custom conversion that converts lever guns over to shoot semi-automatic rounds. I know they do it with a 10mm, but I can't remember who that is off the top of my head right now.
I'm sorry, you just said the magic words. Did you say 10mm lever gun?
Yes, I did.
Okay, TJ, you take it from here. I'm gonna be Googling for a minute.
Yeah,
I have heard rumors that a bug has been dropped in the engineers' ears at Remington for a 458 SOCOM lever gun.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I've heard that rumor's been, that's been dropped in the.
But
ears.
see, I this is one of those things where just because you can, does it really mean you should?
Right.
Because you tell me 458 SOCOM, and I think great, the semi-auto hammer of Thor, right?
Right.
But then you've got the 45-70. The lever gun has always had, it has the trajectory of a basketball shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
But it hits like a demolition ball or a wrecking ball.
The one thing I think where the lever gun lacks is you've got 30-30 and you've got 45-70, but you really don't have much in between. Yes, I'm aware of 35 Remington. Yes, I'm aware of 38-55. But there really was not that mainstream intermediate. You either went from 30-30 to 45-70 without a lot of option in between. Whereas in bolt guns, or ARs, you can go from 5.56 into 6.5 Grendel up to 6.5 Creedmoor and 308. So you've got other options. And you made a comment just a second ago about reliability and function. Folks, the lever action, you may think it's more reliable because it's a manually operated gun. It absolutely isn't. I guarantee you take an entry-level AR like a Palmetto State or something in that era, that tier.
I'm sorry, my thing here automatically tunes out the words Palmetto and State in the same. I'm assuming you said Palmetto State because I saw your lips move. But.
Right, but you take something like that, it's going to function fine for the most part through a 2-day class, and you're going to be fine with shooting 1,000 rounds. You're not going to run 1,000 rounds through a lever gun without problems. They're just think of what they're designed for.
Yeah, like going bankrupt because 45-70 is expensive.
Right.
Speaking of going bankrupt, I found your thing here.
Yeah.
So Grizzly Customs now says that Ranger Point Precision was the originator of the process I'm using. They've decided to stop doing it, et cetera, et cetera. For the low price of $2,495, you can send them your rickety-rackety lever gun, and they could turn it into a 10mm. Holy shit!
It's only money.
Yeah, sure.
Kent, you sound like you're admonishing them, but at the same time you're admiring them, and you're doing the calculations in the slush fund in your head. Like,
Yep.
There was that whole COVID-19 stimulus paycheck that came in, and
If I teach 3 classes and save all the money,
yeah. Now I can have my Ruger GP100 10mm, and I can have my Ranger Point Precision. Oh shit!
But if it takes Glock mags, just go with the Glock 40. You have one.
I'm taking over the West. Here I come. $3,000 later.
Yeah. So in all seriousness, so I currently don't have a lever gun.
Mm-hmm.
If we're looking for hunting, but obviously going to be ready for social work, what are some of the things that you take into account, and what would be if you didn't have the 30-30? While that is always going to be an option, what is something that you would be looking at? Do you like the 357? Do you think that's adequate?
Out to about 50 yards. I think most of the ballistic testing you're going to see about 1,800 feet per second muzzle velocity coming out of that. And that's pretty adequate. It's not going to be super. It's not in 5.56 category. People try to claim that it's like a 30-30 out to 50 yards, and maybe. I gotta tell you, if I was going to run a lever gun, and if the rules are I can't have 30-30,
Right.
which is going to be my first choice, would be 30-30. If I can't have that, and I can't cheat and have 35 Remington and claim it's not a 30-30, I would probably go with a 44 Magnum, an 1894 and 44, and I would just find a round that worked well with it. And I would not try to pair that up with a 44 revolver. I would just run with my regular Glock 19 and just have that Marlin 1894 ready to go. I just bought. I got them out of the post office box today. Skinner Sights makes a winged rear aperture sight that uses the already drilled and tapped scope mount holes on the 1894. You just screw it in there and it gives you a peep sight in the back versus trying to use the buckhorns. And then, so my 1894 is about to have parts from multiple manufacturers in it because I'm going to put a Ranger Point Precision dovetail protector because they make a rounded one that fits the profile of the barrel. So I'm going to take the rear sight completely off, put that dovetail protector in it. And then I'm putting the Skinner winged rear sight on that. And I'm going to try it with the factory front sight. They think it's going to work, but I may end up having to replace the front sight as well if there's not enough adjustment. And that's what I'm going to run on 357. I hate, it hurts my soul to debauch this is a pre-crossbolt safety JM 1894. And it just hurts my soul to alter that gun, but it's at the point where I can't see the sights. So it's either get rid of the gun or make it fit me. So that's what I'm doing. I also bought a set of those wing sights from Skinner, both front and rear, that are going to go on that 16-inch youth model 336. And then my 20-inch 336 that I've had since high school has a set of the Ranger Point rear sight, peep sight on it with their fiber optic front. And I can see the sights, and that's why I've gone with that. I'm very anxious to see what Aridus comes up with their 1894 Crom. I've seen the pictures of the prototype, and I think he's got those up on his Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, he does.
So I'm very interested to see those firsthand. Midwest Industries is making a replacement front rail, and then they have a mount that attaches into this M-lock slot on the fore end that actually sits parallel to the barrel, and you can turn the sight sideways like an aim point micro sight sideways and attach it to that, so your elevation becomes your windage and your windage becomes your elevation, and it puts it at the the bright eye level to run without having to go to cheek risers and everything. The problem with that is you're putting M-lock stuff all over your lever gun, which is great for a utility rifle. If let's say I'm taking it out to shoot coyotes or hawks, and I'm going to be out in low light, well, then obviously I want a way to attach a light to the gun and everything. So you need to have utility purpose if you're going to be doing all that, and then still claim the rifle as a defensive tool.
I was just going to ask you that. So, is there I've got a JM, actually might even be a pre-JM Marlin 336 that was mine from my dad, and I threw the XS rail and the XS sight package on it. Is there like a clamp mount for a light, or is there? I really don't want to have to throw M-lock shit on that. All I want to do is put a light on the thing. And
just use something like the Viking Tactics mount that goes into the Picatinny rail, and just turn it sideways, running off the rail, and it's just going to be sitting out there, running alongside the barrel, and it's it's not going to be all the way out to the end of the muzzle. It's just going to be out there on your rail, but you can make that work.
Yeah, I have an optic on the rail, and I was hoping for something like a shotgun magazine. Like, how the shotguns have the mag tube clamps.
Ranger Point Precision makes a replacement barrel band that has a Picatinny rail section as part of the barrel band, and you could do that and put like a TLR or a X300 or something on there. Or I guess you could put a scout light on it as well. But let's talk about something with the lever guns there too, though. As you look at the price of if you go buy one right now, coming off the shelf, you're looking anywhere, $600, $700, $800. you can get a pretty decent AR for $800.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, but at the same time, you are getting so many fantastic ancillary benefits, as we've discussed. I'll give you a perfect example. This is why, I mean, aside from you putting the bug in my ear and my wife potentially hating you.
Oh, she's going to hate me even more after I tell you something after you tell me this.
Right. So I have always been looking at, something that, so when I go to my mom and dad's property on the ranch,
Mm-hmm.
Usually, at least right now, I throw my Remington 870, behind the back seat of the truck, just in case. But I wanted something kind of smaller because to be honest, it's a bit of a hassle taking that thing out from where I've got it stored as, for a home defense setup and then throwing it in the back, behind the seat of my truck. I've got, a shell caddy on there. I've got all this extra stuff on it. Whereas you've got a much more slender profile and form factor that is the lever action.
Uh-huh.
Also, not as big, a little bit shorter, maybe overall length, right?
Yeah.
And I've been looking for the quote unquote quintessential truck gun. And the lever action just kind of fits the bill.
Yeah. Well, an 1894 with an 18 or 20-inch barrel in 44 Magnum, you're going to be breaking the 2,000 feet per second barrier with a 230 grain projectile.
Yeah, stop. I can only get so excited.
All right. Well, after you buy that, your next purchase is a Ruger American Ranch in 6.5 Grendel. 16-inch threaded barrel from the factory, bolt action, comes with a 10-round C Products magazine, but you can run the 26-round C Products out of a bolt gun. Top it with something like a 1:8, 1:6 scope and third lever mounts, and you've got a pretty good little modern practical rifle, scout rifle right there. And I say that because I've got a brand new one sitting in my office that just arrived last week, and we did all the mounted the scope, everything. I'm going to be sighting it in tomorrow when I get done with my pistol help session.
It's funny you mentioned that as a scout rifle because I actually did a review on Head Down Firearms Master Series with their 6.5 Grendel, set up as a pistol with a 12-inch barrel. And it was the entire premise of the video was the scout rifle revisited. Right.
I wrote a series of articles called Down the Practical Hole, where I looked into, the Jeff Cooper's vision of the practical rifle, the one rifle that you could use for hunting, plus be pushed into like an infantry scout role if you had to be in that type of environment. The all-purpose rifle. And kind of the impetus that got me towards that is a buddy of mine named Eric Lund, who used to shoot for SIG and FN. He's got a company called All Fire Dynamics now, and he works with a group that teaches long-range shooting in conjunction with hunting trips in places like West Texas, Utah. I think they got a place spot they go to up in Michigan as well, and they're shooting hogs at like 400 yards. Well, I didn't have a rifle that I could take a hog at 400 yards with. Well, so I've got to get a rifle that I can take a hog at 400 yards just in case I get to tag along. You've got to be prepared when these opportunities arise.
Of course.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, I want a good bolt gun so I can play this practical rifle concept. And I got to looking into it, and I just could not find a bolt gun from the factory in the configuration that I wanted. But with a few mouse clicks, I could get an AR-15 upper for a few $100 and just drop it on one of my other lowers in the caliber that I wanted. And so my conclusion is that the AR platform in the modern era is the most practical rifle. And I wrote that, and then I ended up writing a second piece because I got no less than like 50 or 60. Well, did you look at such and such rifle? Yes, I looked at all the rifles, and there was not one that met my personal specs. Now, my specs and your specs are probably going to be different. You might want something different in your rifle, and it's yours. You have a right to decide what you want in your rifle. It will be different than what I wanted. And so I intentionally did not publish what my specs were. And after getting like 50 or 60, well, did you look at this rifles? I finally published my specs, And then I got 50 or 60 more. Well, what about this rifle? Does it meet the specs that I published? Well, then no. So even after all that and convincing myself that the AR platform is really the most modern practical rifle out there, I still couldn't shake the bolt gun desires. And Lund took me down to the range with some guns that he built, bolt guns, and I just couldn't get over it. And so I called Ruger, and it turns out that they will sell you the compact stock. You know, they only make the American Ranch compact in 350 Legend and 450 Bushmaster from the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they make those rifles with that stock on it, they had those stocks in inventory. And so I called somebody at the factory and I'm like, sure, we'll sell you one of those stocks. And so it cost me a little more because I had to buy the stock in addition to the rifle. And so we just swapped the stock there at the office. So I've got the 6.5 Grendel American Ranch and with the compact use stock on it. Takes the length of pull from 13 3/4 down to 12 1/2, which makes it much more handy to operate and handle. Put a Vortex Strike Eagle 1-8 on it. And it's going to be a great little woods gun, I think. I'm itching for the chance to go shoot some hogs with it. Maybe go out west and get some longer distance in it. I don't deer hunt just because where I grew up, deer hunt's nothing sporting about it. They're everywhere.
You would get more meat off of my Mastiff.
Yeah. You know, the only reason I had for shooting deer when I grew up is because they tore down the fences and the horses got out and the cattle got out. Mm-hmm. And so, but I help a local property owner get some hogs off of his place. And so I'm really anxious into getting to go run this bolt gun on that and then try to play some of the practical rifle stuff like the Gunsight 270, Randy Kane's practical rifle, and try to keep those bolt action skills alive.
Yeah, I have. I can happily report that I finally have successful, repeated, and consecutive impacts on steel at 1,000 yards with my 6.5 Grendel.
Sweet.
So it is certainly a much more capable round than people give it credit for.
Yeah, Eric Lund took a hog at 400 yards out of a 6.5 Grendel pistol.
I believe it.
Yeah. He and I both had gone into the 300 blackout game, but it just turns out that there's just not the distance. That the 300 blackout excels as a suppressed, like out of a 8-inch pistol or 8-inch short barrel rifle. But out of a 16-inch rifle, you're just looking at a self-loading 30-30.
Yeah. It's the 300 blackout in my opinion is more a competitor to the MP5SD.
Mm-hmm.
As employed by the SOCOM community, in back in the 80s and 90s, and now it came out as a reloader's cartridge, and sure it certainly has its application in place, but it did not go gangbusters the way that everybody would hope that it would. Even I did. I hoped it would go awesome, but yeah, I mean it's certainly got its utility. It's got a lot of adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
You're loading a 308 caliber bullet. So you've got everything from, all the way down to like 115, 125 grain, all the way up to 230 grain and everything in between. So I like that. I like it for that. But dude, I've got a registered 300 blackout SBR in my gun safe that is literally sitting there as a stripped lower with an upper on it with no bolt, no trigger, and no other internal components because I robbed it all to make guns that I actually use.
I've got a 16-inch 300 blackout that's been good for shooting hogs, but I'm using that in a spot where 150 yards is the absolute longest shot I could be taking.
Yep.
And inside that envelope, it's fine. But if you want to get outside of that envelope, anything past 200 yards or so, you're probably not going to have the penetration to take it down. Now, you could be pinging steel if you learn your dope with your scope and everything at that point. All day long, but as far as humanely taking an animal, you're just not going to have the penetration with it at that point.
Yep.
But you go back to that 8-inch pistol or 8-inch SPR, 8 to 10 inch, run it suppressed, subsonic. With a 220 grain projectile. Okay, you're still looking at a 45 at 100, 45 ACP at 100 yards. So it's still going to be plenty effective in that role, but it's just not. that much more superior to 5.56 when you start putting it into other roles.
Exactly.
So let's keep up the trend of talking about current firearms technology. Since we have a chief law enforcement officer, let's talk about the adoption of pistol-mounted red dot optics in law enforcement circles.
I think we're still one generation away on the optics.
Okay.
And maybe it's more the mounting systems than it is the optics. I've been following it closely. I just read the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office's policy and everything that they went through in their testing and their approval process. I've got a couple of other guys in the office that are interested in it, and so they're tracking it as well. We're doing some testing internally. From what I'm hearing from all the sources out there is that the latest version of the RMR is really the only one that actually meets all the testing standards that agencies are going through. That doesn't mean that that's what all the agencies are adopting, because it comes down to the dollar in a lot of instances. SIG's making some sweetheart deals with those 320s, and you look at the footprints in which they're cut for, it means a SIG Optic or a Delta Point Pro. So I did get a Gen 5 19 MOS, and the RMR is mounted with it. I hope I'm saying this correctly. Forward Control Designs made a plate. And I think there's another company out there called CNH. There's a similar
CH Precision Weapons. Yeah, I was on the range with them 2 weeks ago.
I've heard very good things about their plate as well.
Yep.
But I got the Forward Control Designs on the recommendation of one of our other guys, and we've mounted an RMR on that one for me. He's running one on another pistol, and we've got a couple of other guys that are doing some testing, and we're passing the guns around to each other. So not everybody's having to run out and drop the money on them. Where I see it right now, that unless an agency has the revenue just to go out and outfit everyone across the board, what you're going to see is your high-end motivated shooters that are into gear are going to, if it's approved, they're going to be the ones that drop the money to go do it. Like if I were to author a policy tomorrow, red dot sights are approved for your pistol's personal purchase. My guys that are at the range on their off days, and practicing and going and competing on their own and everything, those are the guys that are going to go out and buy them.
So what's stopping you from authoring that policy at this time?
My big concern is there's very few times that I manage to the lowest common denominator. And this is one of them. And stippling guns is another. I won't approve a gun that's been stippled for carry, even if it's a personal gun. Because if I knew everyone was going to go to Boresight Solutions and get it done, or go to Bowie Customs and get it done, I wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. What I don't want to get into the position is I'm having to police, Uncle Jethro did this with the wood burner out in his garage. I just don't want to get into, it's as good as. No, it's not as good as.
Right.
I don't want to get into that. So right now, we're not approving the stippling and stuff on the guns, even on the personal stuff. So when
are you able to? I'm sorry, and this is just this is maybe my lack of understanding in the law enforcement policy and procedure and whatever. Are you not able to say, hey, the following X, Y, Z are approved modifiers or approved whoever?
You could. I could do that. And just an aside here, there are 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. So that's 18,000 law enforcement procedures in the United States.
Right.
I can pretty well do in that regard anything that I want to do. So I could do that where, you've got to get it done from Boresight. You got to get it done from whatever. When I first came to the sheriff's office, personally on rifles were approved, but no personally on handguns. And all the personnel had to carry the issued handgun. And we had SRT guys were issued a 1911 if they wanted it, but everybody else had to carry a Gen 3 Glock 23 or a Gen 3 Glock 22. And I argued with the sheriff, well, if these guys are issued a 1911, Why can't we let the guys that want to carry a 1911 buy their own? As long as it's approved. And he said, well, that's fine, but you're going to have to manage the headache. Well, it wasn't long before I found guys that were carrying guns that I had not approved.
Mm.
Okay, well then I don't want to set up instances in which I have to come down on people. And I know I hate it, it's managing to the lowest common denominator. If I start trying to say you can go to these specific service providers for your stippling, well, then I put myself in the position of I have to argue against why this other guy who I excluded,
right,
it was not approved. So when it comes to the red dots, what we're kind of looking at, like the way the LA Sheriff's Office did it, is it's going to have to be a factory milled slide. So I'm not having to police, this guy milling slides versus that guy milling slides with something like the Forward Control Designs or what was the CH one?
CH Precision, yeah.
CH Precision plate. And my fear on it is, with the RMR, to change the battery, you've got to take this optic off the gun to change the battery and then put it back on. And I don't want to run into a situation of a guy who's not 100% switched on, not going and doing that at the range, properly securing his RMR back to the gun, reconfirming zero, all of those other maintenance things that go along with running the RMR or running the optic, not just the RMR. And so one of the things we're tossing around is if you're going to carry, if we approve it and you're going to carry those every 6 months, you're going to have to meet with the approved instructor at the range who personally conducts all of that maintenance. And then you have to verify your zero and shoot a qualification course with it again.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to it. In my brief, just a couple of range outings with the red dot sight, I have diagnosed a couple of things in my own shooting. I have seen the benefit at 25 yards and greater distances with it. And I want to, but it's just, I think we still need to evaluate a few things. I was really hoping the Acro was going to be it because you could just change the batteries without having to take the sight off the gun and everything, but then the battery life's not there. And I'm just worried about it when one of the guys drawing the pistol and the dot's not on. And then we got all those other problems. So
I'm sure it's been recommended to you, but man, in hosting Jedi, the times that I have, I've seen him do a lot of work to help LE guys get squared away and get that dot stuff going. And I know Aaron does equally as well. And if you haven't reached out to them or if you need to be connected or whatever, I'm happy to help you get with Jedi because.
Sure. He just recently endorsed a group of instructors.
Correct.
Several guys. One of the guys he endorsed is a guy named Brian Hill with the Complete Combatant. They teach on a range in Dahlonega, Georgia, which is way up in the North Georgia mountains. Brian is a very close personal friend of mine. He's someone I very much respect as an instructor and as a fine human being. And like I said, Brian's one of the guys that Jedi endorsed. And so Brian and I are already talking about some range days with our instructors and with me personally on the red dot. I feel like at this point that if I approve them, I'm approving them without a 100% knowledge base on my own. And I need to know more before I approve them. Because I don't think I'm to the level right now that I could teach the guys how to properly use them.
Yeah.
And if I can't teach them how to properly use them, how can I say, well, go forth and carry this?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That makes sense. It's just, I'm always interested in knowing what kinds of things drive that decision making. And actually what you said makes a lot of, the things I hear often, cost or, this or that. And you didn't say none of that shit. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Well, listen, man, we've been burning it down here for an hour and a half. We owe you an opportunity to do your plugs and your shout outs and you gotta make sure you get a little capitalist on us and sell some gun classes. And we'll move to wrap this up because Mr. TJ over there is about ready to embark on a trip up to Pennsylvania to come stay at my place for a little while and shoot some guns and do some shit. You gotta pack him a suitcase.
Well, first,
Yep.
TJ, you're in the Middle Tennessee area.
Yes, I am. Yep.
Akil Kadir and Tiffany Johnson, Citizen Safety Academy. They're in Murfreesboro. Absolutely phenomenal people, phenomenal instructors. They got a young guy working with them named Ryan McCann, who are good people. So you should look them up.
I actually think I know Ryan.
He works it on Target. I think I heard you mention them.
Okay.
In an episode.
Yep. Yeah, I know those guys over there pretty well. I haven't had a chance to meet Tiffany yet, but I've sure when you said her name earlier, it certainly rung a bell. But now that you're mentioning my guys over at On Target and Ryan, I'm gonna have to head over there and go see them again.
Yeah, great folks. If you're there in the Middle Tennessee area, you need to look them up.
Yeah, they're only about 45 minutes away from me. As a matter of fact, I bought my last couple guns from them. So,
yeah. Tiffany and Akil hosted me earlier this year, and I'm hoping to get back up there this summer with some stuff, or maybe in the fall. Facebook, you can find me, facebook.com/firstpersonsafety. The first person safety was my second attempt at a business name. That was the hardest thing about starting a business, was coming up with a name, and it was so hard that I still haven't been able to do it. But I took first person shooter and changed it to safety, trying to put that first person context on it. First person safety on Instagram, but it's the 1ST person safety on there because of the character limitations. And then my webpage is firstpersonsafety.com. So, or if you just Google me, Lee Weems, you'll get to either that Weems guy or First Person Safety. Either one of those web pages will get you to my class listings. First weekend in June, I've got the lever gun classes sold out. And on that topic, the lever gun class, obviously it generates discussion because we talked about it for a good 20 minutes tonight, does not sell. Everybody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to buy a spot in the class.
That's a shame.
But Virginia's got such an interesting thing going on with their politics right now that it's driving a lot of business. So I actually have a sold out lever gun class the first weekend in June, that's Saturday. And then I'm doing a critical pistol skills class on Saturday, which is all about running the gun with both hands, running the gun strong hand only, running the gun support hand only, to include malfunction clearances, reloads, drawing the gun, etc. That class is about half sold out right now. Those are the things I've got up on the schedule. Watch it, because I've got some stuff that's about to hit. I held off on scheduling some stuff once the world ended, and I wanted to make sure we were open back up. I had to cancel one class during all of that because we got just this crazy hodgepodge of local regulations started going into effect across Georgia. And I have a student that was coming from North Carolina to one of the classes, and I was worried about him getting stopped at the state line. And so I canceled that class. Now we're kind of back to normal here. I've run a couple of classes since then, so I'll be announcing some stuff soon. I just taught a class in Texas, so you just missed me in Texas if you're out there. But watch the First Person Safety brand on all the social media and everything. My trigger management class will probably be debuting very quickly this summer. For all the ladies out there, I'll be hosting Tiffany Johnson at Red Hill Range up in Martin, Georgia, which is almost South Carolina, going up I-85 out of Atlanta, for a ladies only event that Tiffany's going to be the lead instructor on August 16th. So you can watch Citizen Safety's webpage for that, and mine for the details. Hopefully some more good stuff coming this fall, and we'll get some stuff lined up, provided the world doesn't really end.
I think the rapture happened and we're all just left over.
That's a scary thought.
Isn't it, though?
Where's Kurt Cameron?
That's a scary thought.
It's a scary damn thought, but it is true.
Yeah, because I grew up in a household where both my mother and my father were ordained ministers.
Oh, dude, so if you're still here, we're all screwed.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the I tell folks my father was an ordained minister and an Army officer. My line was pretty thin and narrow.
You got the TSA pre-check with the big man upstairs. You're good. You're in. Come on up.
The worst trouble, and I kid you not, the worst trouble I ever got into growing up was for not cleaning my room.
Really?
But I have a first cousin that lived on the opposite side of the same driveway that's 4 months younger than me, and our first and last names are the same. Our middle names are one thing's different. He got in trouble for everything, and I got blamed for half the stuff he did. My parents knew the difference, but around town, I got blamed for half the stuff he did.
Oh, that's awesome. So I can imagine you going to apply for law enforcement, and they're like, Lee Weems, no, not that one.
Well, it's funny. I don't work in the area in which I grew up, but when my carry license, at 21, this is a funny story. I hope we got time for it.
Do it.
At 21, I applied for my carry license, and the process in Georgia is you have to go through the probate court, and you fill out all the paperwork. Then they send you to the sheriff's office to get fingerprinted. And
you go through the probate court?
Yeah, you go through the probate court.
Is there a sweaty man in suspenders that sounds like Foghorn Leghorn involved in this process?
Oh, no. Well, the judge from the county where I grew up was a lady. Okay. But her name was Yvonne Harrell. And so I went to Judge Harrell, filled out all the paperwork, go out to the sheriff's office, get fingerprinted. 4 months later, still don't have my license. And so I go by to see Judge Harrell. And I go into her office and say, Judge Harrell, 4 months ago I applied for my carry license and I still don't have it. Well, she picked up the phone and called the sheriff. The sheriff thought that it was my cousin applying for the license. Mm-hmm. And this was back in the day where the sheriff could just get away with whatever. And he was just like, I just want to give that boy a license. And what he didn't know was I was tight enough with the judge that her and her husband gave me a pony. When I was growing up, when the judge gives you a pony, she's probably going to sign off on your carrier license too. And so she says, he's about to drive out there and pick up his license right now. It better be ready when he gets there. And so I drove out to the sheriff's office. They handed me everything. I came back to the courthouse and she issued my license. When my renewal came up, I walked in and filled out the paperwork, and the clerk looked at my name, looked up at me and said, are you George's boy or Pat's boy? I'm George's boy. Okay, here's your, and they handed it to me and I walked right out.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Background checks at its finest. Because in the town where I grew up, that's all anyone needed to know.
Yeah, that was the background check.
That was the background check. I'm George's boy, so therefore I was okay.
Who's your mama? Who's your daddy?
That's right.
Okay. All right. You good. You good, son.
Who are your people?
You tell your mama I said hi.
Yeah. Who are your people?
Oh my God.
If you messed up, word beat you back home. So you just didn't mess up.
Mm-hmm.
You just did not mess up. My mama worked at the bank. My grandfather worked at the grocery store. It would be home before I got there. So I just made sure I didn't get in trouble. I didn't do anything to get in trouble.
My goodness.
That's awesome.
I'm just so out southerned right now. It's not even funny. I don't even know what to. I feel like I should say like cornbread. Is cornbread the correct response right now?
Cornbread. Yes.
Cornbread is always the correct response, especially when you realize it is merely a delivery vehicle for the butter.
Oh yeah.
So I learned about Milo's when I went to visit TJ and his family. I learned about some sweet tea. I don't know nothing about no sweet tea. I had no idea. Didn't have a clue.
Oh yeah, man.
Is there any other kind?
No.
I don't know.
No, there isn't.
They said tea, and I was like Arnold Palmer, and they're like, "Get out of my house." I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But all right, let's see. What do we have to do? I guess we should do our pluggity plugs. So let's see. We sell some t-shirts. Teespring. You'll find the link in the description for our hashtag Run the Gun Not Your Mouth t-shirt and our Mag Stiff t-shirt that TJ will have done before he comes on vacation.
Yeah.
Right.
As soon as the knives sell out.
Everybody gets a knife with a t-shirt, right?
Yes, everybody.
I hate both of you.
You get a free t-shirt with the purchase of a knife. This is fine. It's not like he's got a day job or anything.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. So we got that. We got the Subscribe Star. It's our version of Patreon, but for, free Americans. So if you'd like to support us individually, we don't care if you give us a penny or $100, but if you give us $100, TJ will make you a knife. So subscribestar.com/Sling'N podcast for that. Our individual stuff, he's the Let's Sling'N Ginger. I am Green Mountain Defense. GreenMountainDefense.com/training is where you can come find our schedule for the rest of the summer. The COVIDs is over. We are back to normal operation. We only, like Lee just said, we only canceled one class. All our other hosting is still going on. So yes, Tim Herron is still coming And yes, I've still got a bunch of dates this summer if you want to learn how to point a pistol in the right direction and press the trigger without disturbing the sights. And do a lot of stuff where you get to figure out colors and shapes and numbers and all that good cognitive decision making and all that stuff. It's a fun time. I had a gentleman this weekend. I called out green 17, and there was no green on the board. So he shot the numbers for 17 from blue and red. I said, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "That makes green." Jesus. So
blue and red makes purple.
Okay, well, see, he was wrong anyway. I don't know. All I know is I had yellow, blue, and red. That's all I had on the thing. I yelled green 17. He pop. Shit.
Yellow and blue make green.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
On next week's podcast, we go over primary colors.
Yeah.
Roy G. Biv.
Dude, I don't know none of that stuff. And then,
Roy G. Biv are the colors of the rainbow.
Right. I knew that much.
Yeah.
I just don't know what they are or what they make together.
Yeah.
For those of you playing the home game, I just put my two fingertips together to make a color for some reason. It's like EC. So I'm completely and totally off track in our ad read. TJ, what did I forget? Oh, Right On. Please support Right On Optics. We're happy to be on their pro staff. I just got in my new 1-8 and not too shabby for an optic price like a Strike Eagle, I dare say. So we'll be mounting that on something coming here soon, getting that out and shooting it. And I know I keep saying this, but I seriously am almost done with the video on the Right On pistol mounted optic. Speaking of red dot stuff, if it can take 10 millimeter, it can probably handle your 9 just fine. That's all I'm going to say about that. Tune into the video. And please follow TJ. Please go read his articles. He's a better writer than I am, as it turns out. The Gunpoint blog says so. So you can go read all his stuff over there. And he's making awesome kind of like in the garage, how to mount your scope and how to do this and how to do that videos. And they've all got his cute little adorable corgi in them. So I don't know why you wouldn't subscribe to see a corgi. So do that. And as always, we're super happy to be in partnership with holdmyguns.org. Suicide prevention and awareness for the gun industry. If you'd like more information on that, please visit HMG on holdmyguns.org and donate. TJ, you want to wrap us up? Get us out of here?
Yeah, man, because after all, you did forget about our dear friend Kerry Davis at Dark Angel Medical.
Every time.
Code BB Bravo 15 will get you 15% off at checkout. We get no kickbacks or anything like that, but we'd appreciate you mentioning in your order comments that the Sling'N Led podcast sent you, just so that Kerry knows that we're showing him some love over here on the podcast. With that, folks, Kent is Green Mountain Defense. We've got Lee Weems. Thank you, sir, for joining us as always with First Person Safety. His links and all of his information will be in the description as well. And if you are hearing this on podcast, be sure to subscribe. Head on over to the YouTube channel once in a while and catch us live. You can interact with us through the comment section. We'll be happy to curate any questions or input that you might have to contribute to the conversation. May or may not be a show next week. You know, after all, Kent and I will be hanging out doing the family thing, which means we will probably both be carting around kids all over Pennsylvania. So either way, we always appreciate your participation and your patronage. Until we see each other again, God bless you all. Take care of each other and get out and shoot.